There is one particular issue which I find extremely distressing, and that is the politicising of anti Semitism. Now, I've said many times on my channel that anti Semitism, Islamophobia is wrong. Any hate speech towards anybody, no matter who they are, is wrong. Now, my major concern here is that we don't seem to be able to differentiate between what the IDF does in Israel, the Israel government itself, and the Jewish community. And I've said many times that we need to understand that there's many in the Jewish community who disagree with what the Israeli government is doing in Gaza. And there's no way in the world that, in my view, you can validate the death of now what appears to be about 50,000 people, mostly women and children, which is an effort to wipe out a whole population of people. I find it inconceivable that anybody could support that. And the Australian government in more recent times has chosen to make a stand against the Israeli government. That is not anti-Semitic. That is not against the Jewish people. It is against a government. And the fact that we don't seem to be able to differentiate between the two, or that we want to politicise that in some way in relation to anti-Semitism, I find abhorrent. Now, in recent times, Dreyfus has come out, the Attorney General of Australia, has come out and made statements in relation to what Dutton seems to be saying about this. And I think it's important that these statements be made because Penny Wong's made statements which is about her expression of sympathy towards Jewish people, particularly for the things that are said against them, and the rise of anti-Semitism here in Australia. Now, what Dutton would expect the government to do more than what they're already doing, I do not know. Neither does he. It's an opportunity to spew hatred towards the government based on a view around not doing enough to curtail anti-Semitism here in Australia. Now, I'm appalled to think that anti-Semitism in Australia is rising. It is for all of us to note that we must do whatever we can to combat such hatred. Everybody accepts that. We can't, the governments cannot, no matter how hard they try, to prevent individuals who are secretly plotting to present hate speech towards the Jewish community. You can't stop that stuff. You can bring in penalties, and I hope that governments do, that will encourage people not to behave in that way. And recently here in Australia, they've just discovered a caravan that was full of explosives that was supposedly going to be used against a synagogue or a childcare centre run by the Jewish community. That is horrifying, absolutely horrifying, and we all need to make a stand against that. But I want to highlight that, and to us to better understand that the more we politicise it, the more we kind of encourage people to do these terrible things, to act in terrible ways, because it is about them making a political statement. It's not really, it's just about hate speech. That's it. But we need to be mindful that this needs to be a bipartisan effort, not one that appears to be divided and which divides our community. We all need to stand up against anti-Semitism. So in a recent article, this conversation has been carried further, where Dreyfus condemns grotesque attempts to politicise anti-Semitism and swipe at Dutton. And I think rightfully so. Attorney General responded in Poland to criticism from opposition leader over Penny Wong's visit to Auschwitz commemoration. And this is sad, I think, that it's happening at a time when 80 years ago, 6 million people, well, prior to that, but up to 6 million people were murdered in Auschwitz. And this is a reminder of what hate does. And we all need to be mindful that we all need to condemn hate speech. We need to make sure there are penalties that punish people for acting in ways which are anti-Semitic and Islamophobic as well. Attempts to politicise anti-Semitism in Australia are grotesque, the Attorney General Mark Dreyfus has said in a swipe opinion done while visiting Poland for a Holocaust commemoration. It came as both major parties pledged millions of dollars to upgrading Holocaust memorials and education facilities in Australia to mark the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz concentration camp. Dreyfus was responding to a question from reporters in Krakow about the opposition's leader's criticism of Penny Wong attending the anniversary event. Why shouldn't she attend the anniversary event? I don't even understand the logic here. He said it was appropriate time and place to reject the politicisation of the Holocaust by critics of Wong. It's been grotesque. I use that word again, to see the rise in anti-Semitism since October the 7th, he said. But it's been equally grotesque to see attempts to being made to politicise either commemoration of the Holocaust or combating anti-Semitism is not wrong. We need to condemn it. Wong said it was not a day for politics. There's a time to remember the murder of 6 million people, 6 million Jews. Asked about Dreyfus' comments at a press conference in WA, the Prime Minister said, unfortunately, there have been elements of politicisation of anti-Semitism. He reiterated calls for unity and urged politicians not to look for political differences where there aren't any. Dreyfus has been under pressure from the Israeli government over Australia's response to anti-Semitism after his diplomatic visit to Israel and the West Bank earlier in January. And that's the difference. The difference is that we have decided that we don't agree with what the government of Israel are doing in Gaza, or the West Bank for that matter. Don't hear much about that. But we need to make a stand against a government that is attempting to wipe out a whole group of people, trying to wipe out Palestinian people, because the far right in the Israeli government see them as a continual threat, women and children as a continual threat. And now, to my view, this is Nazism in reverse, in a way, brought about by the great dislike for a particular group of people, and it's disgusting. But that's what the IDF are doing. That is not to make a stand against what the IDF doing is not anti-Semitic. It is anti-IDF. It's anti-military. It's anti a political party. It's not anti-Semitic. And we need to make sure that we make that particular definition quite clear. So let me know what you think about this particular issue by subscribing to my channel, ringing the bell for further notifications. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.